Right, everyone. I wanted to make a short video, with the camera more stable, than the recording that I try to present, this morning. Okay, I just want to go over some of the things that I mentioned in the morning, but you couldn't hear the video. So let me take the rib cage here. So I'm going to take the rib cage. This is one of the torso models that we have here in the lab. So I'm going to take the rib cage and show you some of the things here. You see this area right here in the center of the chest? That's known as the mediastinum. The mediastinum. So in here we have the heart, and we can see the great vessels of the heart. We have the aorta in red here. We have the pulmonary trunk, superior vena cava, and if we take the heart out, you can see the inferior vena cava right under. So you can see that the heart is in the central compartment of the chest, which is the mediastinum. We have the great vessels of the heart that includes the aorta, the pulmonary trunk, the superior vena cava, and the inferior vena cava. Okay, if we take out the heart, we can also see that the heart is within the pericardial cavity. Okay, but also in the mediastinum, we have the esophagus, and the esophagus is running right behind the trachea, right behind the trachea. Okay, so we have the trachea. Notice that the trachea enters the chest, the thoracic cavity, right? It enters the thoracic cavity, and then it branches. It gives two branches, one to the left and one to the right. These are the primary bronchi. So we have the left primary bronchus and the right primary bronchus. The trachea and the immediate branches of the trachea, they're also in the mediastinum. So we have the heart, we have the trachea, we have the esophagus, we have the great vessels of the heart. There are some nerves that are also in this area, like the cardiac nerves, the phrenic nerves, and the vagus nerves. They all pass through there. There is also a gland that sits right in this area, which is called the thymus gland, that is also in the mediastinum. So if I ask you to name the central compartment of the chest, that's called the mediastinum. Okay, mediastinum. And if I ask you to name the organs within the mediastinum, you can say the heart, the thymus gland, the great vessels of the heart, the trachea in its immediate branches, the esophagus, okay, the esophagus there as well. And there's some nerves here, so you could also name them, like the vagus nerves. There is one on each side, and also the phrenic nerves, again, one on each side, and the cardiac nerves. Now this is the right lung, and here's the left lung. If I were to take the lungs out, they will be within a cavity which is known as the pleura, the pleural cavity, actually, the pleural cavity. So we have the right pleural cavity and the left pleural cavity. If I take the lungs out, okay, the lungs are not in the mediastinum. They're lateral to the mediastinum. Now going into the abdominal cavity, abdominal pelvic cavity, we can see that here's the liver. The liver, I mentioned that this is the second largest organ in your body. The first one, the largest, is the skin, followed by the liver. Right here we have the right lobe of the liver, which is pretty large, and then we have the left lobe of the liver. And if I just look underneath here, right behind the right lobe, we have the gallbladder. Okay, there is also two other lobes. We have the caudate lobe and the quadrate lobe. So caudate lobe and quadrate lobe. So right, left, caudate lobe, and quadrate lobe. We have 4 lobes in the liver. But I want to just mention that, you know, if you put a line, like an imaginary line down here and one across the umbilicus, we can call this the right upper quadrant. Okay, and what do we have there? The right lobe of the liver and also the gallbladder. Notice, you know, if I just go like this, you can see a piece of the inferior vena cava that is going right through this opening in the diaphragm. So I mentioned that the diaphragm is pierced by three structures. One of them is the inferior vena cava. Okay, so here's the diaphragm, the main muscle of respiration. It separates the thoracic cavity from the abdominal pelvic cavity. So we remove the liver. Okay, here's the stomach. Now the stomach, you can see that the stomach, you know, if we drew that line right here in the center, we can see that most of the stomach is on the left upper quadrant. You see that? Only the distal part of the stomach will be found on the right upper quadrant. Okay, this is called the pylorus. The pylorus. This is pretty much the body, like the body of the stomach, the fundus of the stomach, the different parts of the stomach. But so the point is that most of the stomach is on the left upper quadrant. Okay. Now, the esophagus is coming right under the diaphragm. So it's piercing through the diaphragm. So this is the distal part of the esophagus, which is retroperitoneal. Retroperitoneal. You know, maybe you can, I mean, it's kind of a little difficult here with the lighting, but here's the esophagus, the distal part of the esophagus. That's retroperitoneal, behind the peritoneum. So that's coming together here with the stomach. So is this tube, this muscular tube, is actually connecting the throat with the stomach. So it's transporting food that we just swallowed. Okay, and at the other end, at the distal end, this is the proximal end. The distal end is attaching here, what's coming together here with the duodenum. The duodenum. Okay. So now what I have here, this structure, what I have here, this is the transverse colon, which is part of the large intestine, right? So we'll talk about that in a moment, but I want to show you that right behind the stomach, we have the pancreas, okay? So this will be this part right here will be the head of the pancreas. Then we have the neck, the body, and the tail. The head, the neck, and the body of the pancreas, so most of the pancreas is also retroperitoneal. Retroperitoneal, okay? Not the tail of the pancreas. So the liver, the stomach, and the spleen are not retroperitoneal, okay? But here's the pancreas right behind the stomach. So the stomach is ventral to the pancreas. The pancreas is dorsal to the stomach. You know, ventral means anterior and dorsal means posterior. All of these that you see here, this is all small intestine. So this structure is all small intestine. So if I remove the small intestine, and you can see that the tubes are smaller in diameter and they're smooth. With the large intestine, is the opposite. The large intestine, you can see that the diameter is a lot, you know, bigger, and they also have these folds on the outside. Okay, so that's distinct. That's distinct from the small intestine. So here's the duodenum. It has like a C shape. It's receiving contents from the stomach. Okay, there is actually a door here and a door here, basically like sphincters, you know, like circular muscles that control, you know, that the food doesn't go up. And this one here controls the amount of food that is going into the duodenum. So the duodenum, right? Jejunum and ileum. The ileum, well, this is broken on the back here, but you can see that up here, the duodenum is meeting up with the jejunum, but towards the end, which is broken off here, you're supposed to have the ileum, which is the the distal part of the small intestine. So we have the jejunum, which is 25 centimeters. Then we have the jejunum, and then we have the ileum. But the small intestine is about 19.5 feet or 20. Okay, but the duodenum being the smallest, 25 centimeters. Now, with the duodenum, most of the duodenum is retroperitoneal, except the proximal 2.5 centimeters. The proximal 2.5 centimeters is not retroperitoneal, but the rest of the duodenum is. So I mentioned that we have different parts of the to the duodenum, but at this point, I did explain that in lecture, I believe, and also in lab, the different specific parts, like descending, like proximal, descending, horizontal, and ascending. Okay, so but it's in here in the descending part of the duodenum where the pancreatic secretions are being received, and also from secretions from the liver. There is a series of ducts here that drain into this area, into the descending part of the duodenum. But we have the duodenum, the jejunum, and the ileum. Those are the three parts of the small intestine. So who's retroperitoneal? Most of the duodenum. Okay. Now, right here, the ileum, the distal part of the small intestine, is going to empty into this proximal part of the large intestine. Okay, this part right here is called the cecum. The cecum. So it's receiving. There is a valve here, and it's controlling the amount of contents that is being received from the ileum. So here's the cecum, right? Now, if we take this out, behind it we have the appendix. It's all taped up here, but we have the appendix hanging from the cecum. I mentioned that the appendix is where? In the right lower quadrant, right? So we have the cecum, the proximal part of the large intestine. We have the ascending colon. We have the transverse colon, descending colon, sigmoid colon, and then after that we have the rectum, like straight rectum. Okay, so again, three parts to the large intestine. We have the cecum, the colon, and the rectum. The colon, you can see that it's the longest part of the large intestine. So the ascending colon and descending colon, that's retroperitoneal, but not transverse and not sigmoid, not the other ones. Okay. All right. So ascending colon and descending colon are retroperitoneal. Okay. So now let's remove this here. And what do we have all the way back here? We have the aorta. Now the aorta is also piercing through the diaphragm. So we have the ascending, the inferior vena cava, the distal part of the esophagus, and the abdominal aorta. So the abdominal aorta and also the inferior vena cava, which is right next to it, that's retroperitoneal. We have the kidneys. On top of the kidneys, we have these glands, which are known as the suprarenal glands. Those are also, retroperitoneal. These tubes down here, these are known as the ureters. So here's the left and here's the right and they're draining into the urinary bladder. The ureters are also retroperitoneal. So with Satt-Pucker mnemonic, right? That's to remember the organs that are retroperitoneal. We have what? Which are they? We have S for the suprarenal glands. We have A for abdominal aorta, and inferior vena cava right next to it. We have D for duodenum, right? D for duodenum. And here's the duodenum. We said that most of the duodenum is retroperitoneal, except the proximal 2.5 centimeters. In total, we have 25 centimeters of duodenum. Okay. Then P stands for pancreas. So we have the head, neck, body, but not the tail. So head, neck, and body is retroperitoneal. Then U in the pucker, right? U means for the ureters. So the ureters are retroperitoneal. C for colon. So we have ascending and descending colon. Then we have K for kidneys. E for esophagus. That would be the distal part of the esophagus. Then R for rectum. So Satt-Pucker is a acronym or mnemonic that each letter stands for something, so it's an acronym. It's to help you remember the organs that are retroperitoneal. So we mentioned also that the diaphragm is what separates the thoracic cavity from the abdominal pelvic cavity. And we said that the central compartment of the chest is called the mediastinum. And in there we have the heart, we have the thymus gland, we have the great vessels of the heart, we have the trachea, the immediate branches of the trachea, the esophagus, and then some nerves like the cardiac nerves, phrenic nerves, and also the vagus nerves. Okay, so that's what I wanted to demonstrate with not so much shaking, with the camera, which you saw in the video that I attempted to show you this morning. So I wanted to put this out to offer some clarity, on what I wanted you guys to see and hear. Okay, so I'll leave it there, and I hope this helps you to understand these concepts with more clarity. All right, have a great afternoon.